Hey everyone, it's your girl Charnel, aka Oh So Limitless. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be discussing everything related to clinical supervision. So what is clinical supervision? How does it work? What are the different types of clinical supervision? How do you even go about finding a clinical supervisor? If you are interested in the mental health field and you want to learn another aspect of what it's like to be a therapist behind the scenes, then make sure you stay tuned. First things first, what is clinical supervision? Clinical supervision is a form of training or professional development that those of us who work in the mental health field engage in. So like therapists, social workers, nurses, counselors. It's an opportunity for us to engage in a form of training that will improve our quality of work and services with our clients. Clinical supervision is also a formal process where you learn how to engage in critical reflection. You're able to get feedback. You're able to discuss different cases, discuss different treatment strategies and approaches that you can apply with certain clients. You're also able to discuss ethical dilemmas and issues that might actually arise within that therapeutic relationship. And if you're familiar with the therapeutic profession, you are aware that we often encounter individuals who experience a lot of distress. And so for us as therapists, it's very important for us to understand how to compartmentalize our own feelings and engage in self-care. And so clinical supervision is also important in that aspect, where it helps us, gives us tools to understand how to compartmentalize our own feelings, process our own feelings, and also engage in better self-care. So why is clinical supervision so important? Clinical supervision honestly is a great resource for us to grow as clinicians. In addition to that, it's a great way to aid in our ability to resolve certain challenges that may arise with our clients in our sessions, any challenges or issues they may arise. And I think it's also a great way for us as professionals to be held accountable for the work that we do with our clients. Now, clinical supervision is invaluable for new therapists or therapists in training, because it provides you with a space to learn how to provide effective and ethical therapy without putting your clients in harm's way. I don't think, though, that clinical supervision is only required for new therapists or therapists in training. I think it's also an invaluable experience for experienced clinicians like myself, any experienced clinician, because at the end of the day, every single situation that we encounter with our clients is different and a new experience. And there are so many different intersectionalities or nuances with our clients that can also provide us with an opportunity to learn how to help this specific individual. So whether you're experienced or not, clinical supervision is a vital resource to learn how to deal with specific cases that are currently happening for your clients. It's also a great way for you to feel connected, supported, and learn from other individuals who know what it's like to be in your shoes as a professional. What are the different types of clinical supervision? I'm always talking about supervision in my day in the life videos, so I will include some in the description box below. But there are 4 different types of clinical supervision that I'm going to discuss today for this specific video. And the first one is peer supervision. So peer supervision is when you're working alongside other therapists or professionals that have the same level of experience as you do in your field. And so this type of supervision isn't necessarily always recognized by your regulatory body. So if you are a registered psychotherapist or a licensed therapist, for example, you have to ensure that your regulatory body recognizes peer supervision if this is something that you're doing to meet certain supervision hours that you have to meet to be licensed. However, peer supervision can be just really great because there are people who are currently at your same experience, your same level, who really understand what it's like to experience like imposter syndrome at the same time, or to experience learning a whole new type of approach or training at the same time as you. And so that experience and feedback and support that you get from peer supervision, I feel like can be very different from the support that you get when you have like one supervisor and a supervisee, for example. The next type of clinical supervision that exists is, of course, individual supervision, and that's when there's just one supervisor and one supervisee. Another type of supervision is dyadic supervision. I've discussed this in my day in the life videos as well. Dyadic supervision is when there's 2 supervisees and 1 supervisor. So you get the support of a supervisee, so another peer who again might have the same level or experience as you do. And then you get the support of a supervisor who has more experience and is often the one that's like facilitating that supervision. Another benefit of dyadic supervision is that it's actually more cost effective usually, because you and that other supervisee is splitting the cost of supervision together. Okay. Now the other type of supervision is group supervision, and that's when there's at least 3 supervisees and 1 supervisor. There could be, of course, more supervisees. I think usually there's a requirement as to how many people can actually be in a group supervision for it, again, to qualify for your regulatory body. So if you're meeting specific hours to be licensed as a professional, you just have to check with your regulatory body how many people can fit in a group for it to be considered group supervision. I think for my regulatory body, you cannot have over 12 supervisees in one sitting, because then it's considered more than a group supervision, and that just doesn't qualify because not every person can get input or contribute to that group session. So there are different pros and cons to each of these aspects. If you want to learn more about the different types of group supervision, the different pros and cons, comment below and let me know, and I can of course create a separate video on that. I myself prefer individual supervision because I get that full one-on-one. I could be completely myself and open up to my clinical supervisor. But of course, there's also a lot of benefit that I've experienced from dyadic supervision and group supervision. And the number one thing that I love about the group or dyadic supervision is that it's just more cost effective to do that approach. Now, the last thing that I want to discuss in this video is essentially how you can go about finding your own clinical supervisor. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, I honestly know how difficult it can be to become a registered psychotherapist. And so if that's a process that you're interested in finding out about how to become a fully licensed therapist, then I will include the link to that video in my description box below, and you can watch that after this video. But because I know how difficult it is to complete your licensing requirements, I thought it would be helpful to share with you ways in which you can find a clinical supervisor. So the first way that comes to mind for me is either connecting or networking with other individuals that are in your profession. So LinkedIn is a great resource to find other therapists or social workers or counselors, attending seminars or conferences related to therapy or specific treatment issues that you're interested in learning about. These are all great ways for you to connect with other professionals and inquire, ask questions, be curious. Where did you seek clinical supervision? Who did you seek clinical supervision with? How was your experience with that individual? Can I get their contact information? And I've found that people in the helping profession, of course, are always very helpful and willing to give up information. And so I think it's very valuable for you to network, build your relationships, and even if you have peers in your grad program, stay connected with them. One thing that I didn't necessarily do, but I would recommend staying connected with them because they can be a valuable resource for you in terms of connecting you with the best resources that you will need throughout your career as a therapist. Now, the other approach that you can do is go on therapist directories. So for example, some people will go on like Psychology Today, for example, to find a specific therapist to help them with their needs. Same thing you can do as a therapist looking for a therapist who can provide you with clinical supervision. So you could type either in Google or in these therapist directories, as I mentioned, like psychologytoday.com. You could type in clinical supervisor, CBT, or clinical supervisor, dialectical behavioral therapy, if there's a specific therapeutic approach that you want to learn more about. And I think it's always super important to ask specific questions to ensure that they are qualified to provide you with supervision. And if you're interested to know the questions that I ask, because I literally do an interview whenever I'm trying to find a clinical supervisor, I have questions listed, ready to go to interview them to ensure that they will be the best fit for me. And I found that my questions have been effective. So if you want to know the questions that I asked and how to ensure that you're finding the best fit, best type of therapist for you or a clinical supervisor for you, comment below and let me know. And of course, I can do another video on that. Another way for you to find a clinical supervisor is for you to reach out to your school, your grad school, and ask if they have any lists of clinical supervisors that they've worked with in the past, or that qualify to meet your regulatory body's needs. And often schools, because again, they provide you with placements, they provide you with different places that you can get your hours, your clinical hours from. They also might have a list of clinical supervisors that might meet your needs. I think it's also important for you to recognize that, again, your clinical supervisor has to meet the requirements that your regulatory body needs. And sometimes you can actually get a clinical supervisor who does not have the same credentials as you. So for example, I'm a registered psychotherapist. I am able to get supervision from a psychologist. That is not always the case. Sometimes with social work, you might only be able to get clinical supervision from specific social workers. So you just have to be aware, do you want to ensure that the supervision you're getting is from someone that is in the same regulatory body as you, or are you wanting to get supervision from someone that's from a different regulatory body from you? And there are different reasons why you might choose these different approaches or supervisors, but again, if you're interested in knowing about that, comment below and let me know. Now, there are two other ways in which you can find a clinical supervisor. Sometimes people pay additional fees. I've discussed this in the different fees that are required to start up your private practice. For example, people pay an association fee. So a professional association, they sign up with a professional association, which is in the best interest of the therapist. You get to connect with other therapists. They give you discounts on certain services for therapists. They give you discounts on like insurance. And sometimes they might have directories where you can actually access, again, a list of possible clinical supervisors. Another way you can go about finding a clinical supervisor is if you attend a specific training. Let's say you're doing a training on emotionally focused therapy, and there is, of course, an instructor. You can always ask that instructor if there are any specific supervisors or a directory of supervisors that can offer you more clinical supervision on that specific modality of therapy. So there are so many different ways that you can go about connecting with individuals, but you always want to make sure, again, I've said this multiple times, that supervisor is the best fit for you. And I'm actually thinking, you know what, I will do a separate video on how to find the best therapist or clinical supervisor to meet your needs, so that you're not necessarily wasting your time, because I've honestly had an experience of having great clinical supervisors, and I've honestly had the experience of having not so great clinical supervisors. And honestly, I've learned invaluable information from both situations, because in those situations where I've had clinical supervision where like I just did not think it was the best, I knew what it was like if I want to do clinical supervision in the future. I knew what it was like to be in that person's shoes and not necessarily feel like I was heard, not necessarily feel validated, not necessarily feel like I was best supported. And so that's actually going to make me a stronger clinical supervisor in the future as well. And then of course, when you have a great clinical supervisor, you're just killing it with your sessions with your clients, and you feel more confident, and that imposter syndrome kind of dwindles away. And so again, clinical supervision can make a huge difference in your growth and your journey as a therapist. That is it for today's video. If you have any questions, please comment below and ask away. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And make sure you check out my other day in the life videos, where I actually walk you through the process of my clinical supervision experience, what my day looks like, and of course, check out the process on how I actually became a licensed therapist. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you all in my next video. Bye.